Were you going to pull up the YouTube page?
No. That's going to be short and sweet. So,
Well, I have been working on trying to get my base station and rover set. And by set, I mean um, get a firm fixed position for my base station so I can program them in and always put the antenna on that spot. In between that, I traveled to Texas where I have another base station and hopefully soon to be rover. And I was trying to operate my base station and it was turning on, power lights were coming on, but the actual unit wasn't responding. So I have contacted, it happens to be a outfit in China. So I used WhatsApp to send them a note and asked for the firmware, thinking if I can update the firmware to somehow, force a firmware upgrade or do some sort of factory reset or back to default, that I might be able to get it talking again. Because when it powers up and I open it up in the OEM software, I do get a message about sort of like waiting for some module name. So that's what it just repeats. It's like it's waiting for something. And so it does actually reply, but it won't reply to any, even if I just send it a command to say, what firmware are you running? It won't respond to that. Just sort of ignores it. So it's in some sort of loop. I don't know if it can be recovered or not. I don't know if you can see that very well. That's a picture of the actual GPS unit. And so it's got 20 pins there on, I'm going to say, my left. And so if I can't push firmware to it using the OEM software, I'm hoping there might be some sort of reset combination in those pins. So anyway, that's one of the things that I'm working on at the moment.
they say it gives you a message, something about a module didn't start or doesn't work or something. Would you
Waiting on, and I was looking for the module name and it doesn't, I can't find it here handy.
Does it seem like they're talking about a software module, or does it sound more like a hardware thing? Or
looked like a software module that the firmware was waiting on, but that's just my quasi guess. And as you might expect, the WhatsApp guy said, "Hey, I'm marketing. I don't deal with technical things, so you got to email OEM support." So that's my next step.
did you try punching the error message into Google and see what it says?
I did not do that. Not that I recall.
And again, if they copied Novotel, is there an echo going on? No,
I don't hear an echo.
okay. It went away now. I was gonna, if they copied Novotel close enough, it could be you're going to be getting responses for Novotel stuff saying, they may have documented the thing too. So that might be a good thing to try.
Yeah, that is a good idea. Have to connect it back up and pull up the exact message.
And it's got like several ports you can talk to, doesn't it, on the board if you need to? You could try a different port, or it's probably going to be the same message everywhere, but that's something else to consider.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where it has 3 serial ports, and just out of sort of process, I send commands on COM3 and program output to be on COM1. So hopefully it's not dead, but
What about the other? What about your rover? Does it, have you tried that to see if it's working or is it doing the same thing right now?
I've misplaced my rover GPS unit, so I have to keep searching for where that is.
I figured it'd be bolted onto your lawn tractor, but I guess not.
No, because that's still a work in process. So I haven't gotten around to the electronics board on Texas rover #2. So I got to go find out where I stored that. Anyway,
A while back, I was thinking it might have been handy to have all your stuff in one place as you experiment, but now I can't remember why I was thinking that. So I was just thinking maybe it'd be handy if you take it back home with you when you go. If it's, I realize you probably got a lot of crap you're dragging around anyway, but if you take those back with you, that might be handier to have them all at the same time. It'd be interesting if you tried to see if the two will work together. Try one of your old ones and one of your new ones together to see if that works. It should, as far as I know, that should work. So you
yeah,
got your base station correct and generating correction data, and if you can get that to the new board on your lawn tractor, I think that should work. So that would be. And then the other thing, like you keep moving stuff back. If you're transporting, which maybe now that the weather's getting worse, maybe you're not going to be going to your remote location anymore. But then you could actually have one that you just carry around to set up there and leave the other one set up in your backyard or whatever. So just the fact that
that's
you've got that many extra things that might be handy to have them all at the same time. So I don't know.
definitely good points. I was hoping to try. I brought the newer model is 706, the older model is 501. The 501 is the one that's dead. Um, I was hoping to try getting the 706 and the 501 to talk, but that's when I found out my 501 wasn't saying anything other than I'm waiting on this module. So if I can get it to reset, then yeah, I'll definitely try to get the 501 to talk to the 706.
Does it give you the I'm getting these weird echoes again, but it's I guess we'll just put up with it. Um, what was I going to say? Does it respond to anything that you type in?
Not even the slightest. Doesn't blink. I mean, it's because it's on a development board, it will blink, the number of satellites that it's seen and all that stuff. It doesn't do, just says power. And on the software side, um, I put in the simplest of messages like, what firmware are you? And it's like I didn't even type it.
Huh.
So my fear is it's dead. My only hope is if I can force some sort of factory reset or push a firmware update.
And sometimes on those, like if you hold down the reset button while you're turning it on and then release it, sometimes that like modems and stuff will do that. That's just a way they have to reset the thing.
Yeah, the GPS unit itself, um, I mean, that's the unit again. It doesn't have there's no user interface buttons on there, but the development board um, might have something like that. I don't recall now. I have to go look at it or pull up the documentation.
Yeah, if you got documentation on it, I would think you could go through and look up reset or factory reset, or they might give you some clues on what to do with that stuff.
Anyway, meanwhile, I was looking at, and you'll laugh and chuckle and think I'm silly, but see if I can find their website here in Google Spark RTK, see what I get. These guys must be selling these to automotive manufacturers who are putting them in their cars because they're priced like they're producing 500,000 of them. I was just putzing around over at Ag Open GPS, and there's not much chatter about these, but there is a little bit about these units.
So I did notice there are two of those. See right there on the page, it says there's the 1120R and there's 1125R. And I assume the 1125R is the newer one. And that company that's like Tindy, there's some guy that's making up something that's using these modules. And every time I look,
really?
it says, oh, it's coming in the future. So I don't know what's going on there. But it does look like these modules are about half the price of what the ones are for the U-block stuff. And I don't know, to use them, I'd assume you'd have to have two of them so you can say create a base station and a rover, or and again, if you look at it, a lot of these are saying L1 and L5. There's at least one right there on the right that says L1 and L2. So again, I'm not sure what that involves. So if you switch to something that uses different satellites, say if you use L1 and L5 instead of L1 and L2, like we've been doing, then you probably have to, get both ends to get that to work.
So you don't think you could send correction data from an L1, L2 unit to a rover that's got L1, L5?
I'm going to say probably not. You're only going to get half the information, and I don't know if that's good enough to keep it happy or not. It may work. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't have noticed that. That's interesting.
So
It does remind me. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Scroll back up the top so we can see those other ones, just the modules. So that one just says, oh, the one on the left that's at the 1120 says it says L1 only. So that's an older one. So you want to get you want to get at least a dual band, because that does magical corrections for you. So I see they got the same price on them, so it makes sense to get the one that's the
Multiple band.
oh, I see they got the module, and then right next to it they got it mounted to a breakout board for $10 more. So if somebody really wanted to play with these, I suppose you could go that way and play with it, but I'm still thinking you might need two of them to make this. And in my case, where I've got the commercial correction data, well, they only have L1 and L2. I don't think they have the concept of L5 on their stuff. I haven't looked recently, but I don't think they have the L5. So back to my place, if I wanted to do it, then I'd have to get one for a rover and one for a base, and let them talk to each other. So again, that costs you twice as much again to do that. And since I'm invested enough in the U-block stuff, I can't. As I say, I don't think I can mix and match these because they use the different satellite bands. So
got it. This I thought was interesting. See this phrase "dead reckoning" on this?
yes,
I mean, I was looking at that, and it's not very clear in the documentation that I looked at, but they'll take some sort of odometry data. Let's see, where does it reference that? I mean, this is their test going through our garage and showing how it all works wonderfully. But anyway, one of these pins, and there was just one pin. And I'm like, well, how do you get odometry for a Ackerman steering vehicle with just using one pin?
I think what they do is you generate pulses off your wheels, and If you look hard and look at the stuff that you have, there's as much as you paid for it, and since they copied Novotel, there's a chance that yours will have a odometry input also on your boards.
Hmm.
That's something else you can look into.
And when you say it's a PWM signal that they're taking?
I assume it's just like, it's just like it just a click as you drive forward, as like once a centimeter or once an inch or whatever, it'll just put out a pulse, I assume. I think that's the way the Novotel stuff is working. And we didn't ever try that. We had a really expensive Novotel, and it may have had that, but nobody ever hooked it up to try it. And then we lost it. We sent it to Denmark and never got it back, so we didn't do any more with that.
Hmm.
And then also when they say dead reckoning, it might also have some kind of like accelerometer stuff built into it, some kind of IMU built in. And U-Blox says the same thing. If you look at the different U-Blox modules, they have one they call dead reckoning, and they have various ones you can buy. And I haven't gone any farther because they say I've got enough money invested into the base level stuff that I've got, and I don't I didn't plan to buy this third one that I have now, but I have it, and that's why I'm going to stick with that for the moment.
And my next non-GPS related question. So I was testing and again, I've got limited stuff here in Texas. I was trying to test my 19 or 915 megahertz 3DR SIC radios, and they say they're 5 volt, and I only have the small 3.3 volt Arduinos, and I can't seem to taking two Arduinos, one hooked to, quote unquote, the base antenna, one hooked to the rover antenna. The base antenna just sends out, say, a 10-character statement on the serial port. And I can physically hook them together without the radios and get communication going back and forth, but trying to use the radios. Can you send out a 3.3? Well, I think the answer is no. Sending out a 3.3 signal on the transmit through the radio that's running at 5 volt doesn't seem to work. Do I need a level shifter or something? What would that circuitry look like to be able to use a 5 volt 3DR radio with a 3.3 volt sending, apparatus? Any thoughts?
I think the radios, I think the logic on those is 3.3 volts. You have to go look them up and see, but I was thinking you put 5 volts onto the module to power it, but then I thought the logic was 3.3 volts.
Well, it could be doing something else wrong, but using it with a 5 volt Arduino works. Using it with a 3.3 doesn't. So I must be doing something else wrong.
You got the baud rates all set the same and all that,
115, 200.
and that's the same on both your Arduinos.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, at the code level, yeah, you set the serial port. Yes, 115, 200.
And make sure your wire's not backwards or something. So
I tried in earnest to not do that. I can always try again. So you don't, on the surface, you don't think there should be any problem with on the you give on the 5 volt pin. I put them away, so otherwise I'd show them on the 5 volt pin, feeding the 5 volts, and then on the TX or RX pin, sending a 3.3 volt signal. No issue with that. Doesn't cause you concern.
if you just connect the two two boards together, the 3.3 volts, that works without the radios in there. You can hook the,
Yeah, you can hardwire them.
because the only thing I can think of there, if you're hooking two boards together, you have to hit transmit to receive on the other one, and then the other one have transmit there to receive on the other one. And once you put the radios in there, don't let that confuse you, because you still got to go, on the board, the transmit there has to go to receive on the module, and then on the other side, the module there, the transmit there has to go to the receive on that one. So
Yeah. It did confuse me for a while, but then, I got down to, okay, TX to RX, no matter what's in between, TX to RX.
yes, I'd say it's a fair statement. But other than that, it seems like it should work. So
Yeah, that's confusing then at the moment.
and you could try talking to the modules directly, just hook up. Do you have any of those little FTDI adapter modules laying around?
I have, I think one that's a USB to UART. Is that what you mean?
Yes. And does that have the little pin on it to set the voltage on that? So you can set it down to 3.3 volts.
I don't think I've ever seen that. No, like a dip switch kind of thing.
That's like the little jumper pins and a little shorting block. And yeah, depending where you buy it, it may or may not have that. And um,
I'll have to look.
the logic may be set to 3.3 volts anyway. If it doesn't have any way to adjust it, it might be set to that. But my thought was, hook that up and make sure you can talk to the radio at the 3.3 volts logic level, because you can just go in and just fire up a terminal program and talk to it, and then you can use those AT commands. So basically, something about you have to hook up a terminal and then you type like a plus plus plus, or no, I think it's plus plus plus, and you have to have like 1 or 2 seconds before you type that, and then don't type anything till 1 or 2 seconds after that, and then it'll go into the command mode, and then it's got various commands you can type in, and we posted that a while back, where to find those commands. It's under that. If you go to that SICK website and say advanced configuration or something, it brings up a page and lists out all the AT commands, so you can go talk to it directly. So you don't have to hook up that nav software, whatever they
Mission
people
planner
use.
software.
Yeah, so you can just do it directly. That's what I've been doing when I play with those, is just hook up a terminal, and you can go in, you got all the AT commands, you can set the baud rate, you can set, basically whatever's there. You can actually dump out what's there. So you can say, turn it on and say, show me what's there, and it'll tell you what the baud rate is currently set at, which I guess if the baud rate's wrong, it won't be talking to you. But anyway, once you get to that point, you can say one command will dump out everything and show you what's there. And then you can go through, one at a time and change things. So that's maybe another way to get around that.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. I didn't know you could get it to dump out its configuration just to make sure it's configured correctly.
And there's other software that people use to configure it. It's basically just sending these AT commands to the board and then knows how to interpret those back. So, but it turns out you can just do that manually. You don't have to go through this other software. So it'll tell you two things. One number will tell you you can talk to the board if that works, and then secondly, I don't know what it would take at I suppose at the other end, since you got like an Arduino hooked up, you could just tell it dump out whatever comes out, dump it out to your Arduino serial monitor. So you could go to the other side and just put it back in normal mode, and whatever you type at one end should show up at the other end. So
that'd be interesting.
That'd be another thing you could do. Well, depending
how you have them.
Depending how you have it set, because there's something called framing or framing type, and you can set it to like no, I don't know if they call it framing. It's something about it. What is it expecting for commands? And you can put it in a mode that says just pass the data straight across, and that's what I'm using. Otherwise, it puts the like the nav whatever built a packet, it's expecting that type of packet format. So you probably don't want that right now if you're just taking correction data and pushing through. That's just binary data you're pushing through. So that's just another thing to look at. And if you go to that, again, go to that website that's the thing that says advanced configuration. I think they'll probably talk about that. They don't spend a lot of time on it because they expect you to plug this into their board and their software. So but they do mention it there. So they talk about that a little bit.
Mhm.
And if your stuff's already working, I assume you had that set up, because if it does work with one type of board and not the other, it seems like you've got it in configured enough that it should be working.
Yeah, again, using two, I dug out two Arduino Unos with the long chip in them. They're probably like first generation Arduinos. And couldn't get the software serial to work, but I got the using the RX and TX pins, the hardware serial to work. Software serial sort of worked, but there was just a lot of data corruption. Not a lot, but a few characters didn't come through correctly. So something
And,
about that
and be
speed.
careful using the RX and TX pins, because those are probably in parallel with the UART, or the USB cable coming in has
Mhm.
like an FTDI chip on the board. And it's probably in parallel with that. So keep that in mind if you're going to try to hook up to the RX and TX pins.
Yeah, I did that with great. I didn't think it was going to work, but because then I ran the serial monitor too. But yeah, it came through. I wouldn't use a heart monitor over that, but just tested out. It seemed to work. Anyway, that's all I got. I think you can stop recording.
Let's see, do I have anything? I know Bob was asking about how can he power his new expensive Raspberry Pi 5 board from a 6-volt battery. And I haven't got back to him yet because wasn't thinking straight this morning. But I think what the deal is, he said originally, oh, he's going to use a big 12-volt battery and a down converter and power the thing off that. And now he's realized that, well, his Barbie Jeep probably has a 6-volt battery to drive his motors. And I guess there's various things that could be done there. Get a boost buck converter to convert the 6 volts up to something. Well, actually, you could probably go for the 6 volts and set the output to 5 to get your 5 volts coming out. Now, something that I don't know, I never hear people talking about this, but you buy these random modules off Amazon and eBay that are coming from China. I don't know how well these things are protected as far as say on the input, like under voltage and under voltage type things. If it drops down, as your voltage drops and your battery drops down, is it going to is it just going to shut down, or is it going to burn up the converter, or burn up your expensive devices you have hooked up? So that's something that somebody should look into that someday, and I haven't yet, I guess. Now, most of this stuff, if you just get the small modules, it's just like a chip and an inductor and a capacitor soldered down to a board. And if you go look, it's basically they just took the application note from that chip and made a board, and they're selling that. So there's a good chance those are going to work relatively well. Probably the best choice would be to hook them up to a variable power supply, and actually run the voltage down and see what happens as the voltage drops off, to see if they're going to do anything stupid to you. And that's one thing that possibly like a boost buck converter would take as long as you get the right one, it'll take something in the say 5 to 10 volt input range, be able to run on that, and then output your voltage that you want. So, but again, you have to, because the specs that they put out there, you go to buy a module, it says, oh, an input range of this and output range of this. Well, you got to be careful on that, because that, on the ones that are the buck converter or the boost converter, you always have to have, on the buck converter, the input always has to be like 2 volts higher than what you want your output to be. And they never tell you that. They just say input range is, the 5 to 35 volts, and output is 5 to 20 volts, or whatever. And they don't tell you simple things like that you got to make sure that when you're buying it, you have to know enough about what you're doing to get that to work right. And what was the other point on that? So it's just in general, yes, maybe you can get converters to do that stuff for you. And another thing to consider, just put an extra battery on there. So if you're trying to run something that wants 5 volts, like what I usually do when I want to run my Raspberry Pi, if I'm just doing something quick, I'll just take one of the USB charging batteries and hook up to it. And then, but now you have to look at those to see how much current the things are willing to put out, because as I mentioned on that Slack post, that they claim that the Raspberry Pi 5 now wants up to 5 amps to power the thing, whereas the Pi 4 only wanted up to like 3 amps. And then the ones before that probably were like 2 amps or something. I don't remember what they were, but I found I think it was a website where the guy was going through. He said, well, he got one of these things and he didn't have the right converter. He was using his Raspberry Pi 4 charger on the thing, which has the right kind of connector, because they've switched it over to a USB-C connector for power now instead of the micro USB that they used to have. So both the 4 and the 5 have the USB-C connector. But if you buy the official uh, power adapter for the Pi 4, it's got the right kind of connector and it says it'll put out up to 3 amps. And the guy said he went ahead and used that. And he said it seemed to be working just fine. And he had something hooked up to his, the power going into his Raspberry Pi. When he turned it on, it had numbers on it. So right on the connector, it was telling him either current or voltage or something on that. And then he'd said, okay, so here it is, just sitting here doing nothing. And then he said, okay, now if I give it a load, so he went to YouTube and started playing a YouTube video, and you can see the number on that little connector go up. And I think it was displaying watts or something. And it started off as running like 2 watts. And then when he started playing the YouTube video, it went up like 3 to 5 watts or something like that. And I don't remember what the upper limit on that is. It was like 25 watts or something, whatever. I suppose 5 volts at 5 amps would be 25 watts would be what they're saying. And they keep saying it may require that much. And, they're saying get a supply at least that big, because you got to consider you got that there's some kind of GPU inside of the thing for doing at least video conversions. And then you got the processor. It depends how hard it's thinking as to how much current the thing's going to take. So even though they said the new one needs 5 amps, this guy said he was running it on a 3 amp supply and it was working for him. And he was saying, but keep in mind that if you push it hard, that may become an issue. And that's another case where I don't know what that wall charger is going to do. If it's a 3 amp device, you try to draw 4 amps from it. I don't know. Is it going to burn up the charger, or is it going to just shut down, or is it going to the voltage drop off? So that's just more things like that to contemplate. So then back to Bob's case, where he's got I assume the problem is his Barbie Jeep has a 6 volt battery for the motors. And he thought, well, if he could just run it off that he'd be all set. Then another option is put another battery on there. So he's talking about a quote, a big 12 volt battery is what he originally saying. So just put another battery on there to run his converter and run his electronics. That would be another option. Anybody that's going to do that, make sure you tie your grounds together somewhere. You have to have yeah, electrically you have to have the grounds of both electrical systems tied together. Otherwise, when your logic tries to talk to it, it won't understand and cause problems. So that'd be another option. Just put an extra battery on, and especially if he already has that figured out how to do that. That would be a quick solution. And then back to the USB charging batteries. When they first came out, they were rated at like 2 amps or something, and then some of the newest ones will put out an incredible amount of power. And I didn't realize this until not too long ago that the new USB standard is smart enough that you can tell it at one end. You can say this is the voltage I want it to be, and you could actually get like 10 volts or 15 volts from this little USB-C cable, and one end or the other. It's got an ID code and it says I want this voltage. So you get the new smart chargers or the smart USB batteries, and then I think you buy different cables and plug in, and then the end will either be 5 volts or 10 volts or 20 volts or whatever. So that's something else to consider and ponder with all this stuff. So the things are getting way too smart now. So you got to be that also means you got to be careful if you get a cable that's set to say 10 volts and you plug it into your expensive Pi 5, it's going to burn it out real quick if you do that. So just because it has the right connector doesn't mean anymore that you're going to get the right voltage. You have to pay a little bit of attention to what you're doing there. I'm also curious. He said he's going to plug his 7-inch monitor into it. I made several lines there. I said, well, the old boards had a standard HDMI. The Raspberry Pi 4 has micro HDMI, and the 5 has the mini HDMI. So I don't know if he missed that or if he's got a cable that will plug in and make that work. So we'll see what happens when he tries that.
I thought they were all on back order. I didn't know that anybody was getting them.
I don't know if they are or not. I looked at our local micro center, the store, and they don't have any. I looked at Amazon. They claim that you can get them within like 2 weeks or something. It looked like they would ship them. And yeah, Bob lives out on a farm. I don't know if Amazon, it's the same kind of, you can expect the same delivery out in the middle of nowhere as if you're living in town. But they were saying like if I were to order one last night, they're saying like January 10th is when they expected it to show up. So apparently, yes, if you got money in your pocket, you can order them and get them to show up in a couple of weeks here. But I don't know. That's just some observations I had.
The other thought is, I mean, because I've messed around a little bit with the motors on those Barbie Jeeps. I think they'll take 12 volts. So if you wanted to go up to 12 volts, I think those motors can withstand it. I mean, I don't know how long they'll last, obviously, but
And the other thing you have to worry about, if you have a battery that's running your motors, that may inject enough noise into your electronics that you may not want to run everything off the same battery anyway. And that, I guess, something you could try it and see if see if you can get it to work. You don't want to invest a lot into it and then find out it's not going to work and have to just more parts for your junk box if you do that. So if you end up putting a second battery on there anyway. So and back to the thing that Terry was pointing out, he's got lithium drill batteries that he's running stuff on. So that's another, if you already have electric drills like portable electric drills laying around, that might be another option to use that kind of battery to do whatever you're trying to do. And that just never occurred to me until Terry said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this." And I thought, "Hey, yeah, I got these drills. My drills are all NiCad batteries, and one of my batteries is old enough that it doesn't work anymore. But the other one, that's what I was showing on when I was doing my servo testing and stuff. I just ran off one of those, and that seemed to work just fine. You still have to, yes, be conscious of the fact that it's a battery, so it's going to put a range of voltages. And if you're trying to go from what they call the 18-volt battery down to 5 volts, you still need some kind of a converter in between there. But that's enough of a difference between the voltages that your battery can go up and down quite a ways before it becomes a problem. So again, you just have to pick and choose on the stuff to get it to do what you want it to. And I noticed Bob, he didn't mention which board he ordered, because you can either get it as a 4 GB board or an 8 GB board for the RAM. And I noticed the 4 GB ones on Amazon are around $90 for just the board, or like 130 something for the 8 GB board.
holy cow.
And that's somewhat higher than, because you get the Raspberry Pi 4 and you can buy that as a 1 or 2 or 4 or an 8 GB. And each time it was it went like $35 and then what, 55. I can't remember now. I bought the 4 GB Raspberry Pi 4 before all these shortages came up, and it was whatever their standard price was is what I paid for it. Actually, I could walk into Micro Center and get it for like $5 cheaper when they have them in stock. So that's what I normally do. But anyway, based on the price, I was trying to remember if that for the Raspberry Pi 5 prices, if that's significantly higher than the 4. And I I was thinking their intention was to keep it, keep the price range about the same, but you're probably paying somewhat of a premium there, just again because of shortages or whatever. So it could be that, if we didn't have the shortages, it wouldn't be quite that expensive. But I don't know. My thought was when I started looking at the Raspberry Pi 5, I thought, well, yeah, that's nice. It's like twice they say 2 to 3 times the performance of the Raspberry Pi 4, which is going to lead into another point here, I guess, that I had nothing to say, but I'll get to that. Um, so now I forgot what I was going to say. This is Raspberry Pi 4. I decided that, you know, I've got a Raspberry Pi 4, which I'm not doing anything with, so I couldn't see buying yet the next generation. You can say, oh, I have to have one of every board that comes out, but yeah, eventually you get tired of chasing all this stuff. And I didn't know if it had, for me, I didn't know if it was worth buying a board since I've got all this other crap that I don't do anything with. And so the other point I was going to make was something about the performance on these things, because you can go out and you can find benchmarks between the different Raspberry Pis, and typically what will show up right now, it'll say, oh, well, here's the 5 and here's the 4 and here's the differences between those. I was looking for a chart that would say here's all the way back to the 1, so you get the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4, and the 5, and see what the differences between all those are. And I didn't look hard enough to find that. But something I did do, which I always wanted to do, was compare, say, a Raspberry Pi to a laptop. And I was sitting there watching TV and thinking about this stuff last week sometime. And I thought, here's right next to my chair is an old Dell laptop. It's a Dell D630, and I also have a D620. I've got two of them. They look the same. One's got a slightly faster processor, and I can go to cpubenchmarks.com. I think is what the website's called. They've got, thousands of processors listed, so you can look up the processor that's on that laptop, and I think it gives you a number like 690. It says that's the results of these benchmarks. That's what it gives you. And then I can go to the computer I'm on right now is an Intel. It's got an i5 or an i3 processor in it, and that one was higher. That was like a 2000, I think, on the number for that one. So that's how much faster the newer processors are than these old ones I should get rid of. And I went and checked, and the processor that's on the Raspberry Pi 4, it's like a BCM something, like 9520 or whatever the number is. And I went and looked at the list, and I was surprised to find that processor was on their list. And it turns out that one, it was said it was either the performance of that processor, not knowing what it was in, if it was on a Raspberry Pi or just in an eval board or whatever. But they're claiming the number on that was like around 800 or 900, which is faster than my my old laptop, which is a Core 2 Duo processor. And that was just, part of the evolution of Intel it was going through. It was a computer that I was completely happy with it at the time. And then but that's the first time I've seen any reference directly between a processor that would be on a Raspberry Pi and any kind of laptop. And then I checked the other numbers, so the one for the 5 and the one for the 4, or the one for the Pi 3 stuff, because every generation they come out, they put a new processor on it. And I couldn't, that's the only one I could find is the processor that was on the Pi 4. And it surprised me that it said it's faster, but then that doesn't take into account, how the memory is hooked up to it. And there's various other reasons why it may not be as fast, but that was the only indication I've seen so far that something like that actually, that the Raspberry Pi 4 is beefy enough to do. It's at least better than my old laptops that I have. But the one I'm using right now, that is the i3. It's a little netbook type thing, and it seems to work. It works just fine. We're doing the meetings on it right now, and I've been fairly happy with that. And it's got So let's see, what was it, around 800 or 900, and this one's around 2000. So the i3 is still like twice the performance of what the Raspberry Pi 4 would be. But then they say the Raspberry Pi 5 is 2 to 3 times the performance of the 4. So it could be it's approaching the this i3 laptop at that point.
Hmm.
So I don't know. And the real solution would be find somebody's benchmark that you can run it under Linux and run it under the, well, I suppose a Raspberry Pi runs Linux, so I suppose you run it there and run it on whatever laptop under Linux. You could do your own tests. And it seems like somebody should be doing these tests, but I just haven't found them by digging through the internet looking for them yet.
Hmm.
Because I keep coming back to the question, how big a computer do you need to run a robot? And an answer is I don't know. And apparently you can make this stuff work if you just play around. So
Yeah, my HP 645, I think G645, I forgot the exact model number. It's doing just fine. But then again, if you get into vision or something, some heavy CPU thing like processing vision, then I don't think mine would do it. But so far, so good.
that HP that you got, is that an i7 or is that something else?
What was before an i7? Was it a 5? It's probably a 5.
And the other problem is you look at the Intel stuff and they keep changing the name on all their families. You got Celerons and um, I can never remember what these are, but they got all these different names of chips. They got the Pentium, they got the Celeron, they the Core 2 Duo, and they the Core I series. And then it turns out then after that they've got a number. So you have to go look up that number. So you have to get, say, if you go to that benchmark page, you can uh, say core, or actually you can just type in i3 dash and then whatever the number is. It might be like 6500T or whatever it happens to be. And that you can find that out by going to your, if you go to your laptop and look under settings and look under about or something, it'll tell you what the processor is in that particular device. So you can look that up and uh, go find that. And the problem is, so for each so for each type of family, you've got, say, for a Pentium, then it's going to have a set of numbers, and then for again, I forgot what they are already. Anyway, for each family that comes out, then you have to go look at the numbers. So the numbers don't necessarily match the numbers of a different family. So you have to look it up to find out what that is. And then they keep changing. So just because your laptop has a, say, an i7 processor, it might be an i7 2700 or 5400 or 6500. And each one of I'm making the assumption the larger the number, the faster and better it's going to be, but I can't guarantee that either. So it looks like, say, if you go to Amazon, you're trying to buy a laptop, it says, oh, it's got an i3 3500. So you have to go look it up and see how fast it is, because I found that some of the stuff I was looking at, the i3s are actually faster according to the benchmarks than an i5 was. And this stuff just all baffles me. I don't know, how they come up with this stuff, and it has to do with number of cores in the thing and whether it has hyper threading on each one. Because I think the i5 might be like 4 physical cores, whereas the i3 is maybe 2 physical cores with hyper threading, so they look like 4 cores. And it's just all confusing, and I don't know what to make of that. So it keeps coming back to the question, how big a computer do I need to do this? And the answer is I don't know.
What was the benchmark website?
I think it's just called cpubenchmark.com. And if it's not .com, it might be .org. And maybe that's not it because it's not coming up. So let me go back and try. Or if you just go to Google, type in CPU benchmark or CPU benchmarks. Maybe it's benchmarks, but it's somebody else trying to screw me over here because it's apparently the website's not
I get CPU.userbenchmark.com.
Well, that's not the one I was looking at, but there's apparently there's lots of sites out there. So let me try CPU benchmarks. My computer upstairs has it on there, so I can go check it there. But
There's a
on this
CPU benchmark.net.
That's probably it.
And then Tom's Hardware, who I like, they have something too.
But the first one I was talking about, they've got just thousands of processors listed on that. So you can find just about anything you want except for the ARM stuff. And I can't figure out why that. CPU Passmark. Yeah, this I think is this is the one I was talking about, the CPU benchmark.net. And you have to, if you look on the left here, let me make this bigger. Let me share this. Say here. So assuming you can see that. I sure wish they put a monitor screen on Zoom so I can see what's going out to the world, or it'd be nice to see what's going out to the world and then see what's being recorded. But anyway, I'm not gonna worry about that right now. So on the left here under CPUs, it says high end, high mid range, low mid range, low end. But you come down here and there's one that says, so it's got you can narrow down your search by doing this. But you come here to the CPU mega list. And then you can just type in something here, like say, come on. So if I'm looking for the i3 stuff, you just say i3 dash, and then it brings up a list of stuff down here. Since I don't know what the numbers are right offhand, so it says if you get the i3 1000N, it gives you a number 3655. And I'm trying to remember what the one is in my computer right here. How quickly could I find that? Oh, I'll just waste everybody's time here, but say settings. Oh, I don't run Windows anymore, so settings. I don't remember if I had to open it up or if it is there an about somewhere.
Go to system, top left. There you go.
Is it about maybe?
Scroll down.
Let me try this. So it's a 5010U. So if we go back to the page and I say dash 5010U. So it says this particular computer is right around 2000. So it's 2194 as a result of some mythical tests that they run. And assuming you run the same tests on every computer, this might give you a good idea of, where it ranks to everything else. So then if you put in like an i7 something, so keep in mind that was around 2000. So we come here and I was trying to think what my computers upstairs are. I have two different laptops with i7 processors, and it turns out they both have different numbers to them. Let's see, some of these, here's one here, just a random one looking at it. It's 26,000 as opposed to the 2,000 that the i3 was. So on that one you're talking about, your HP 640 or whatever it was, I think you can also search by, anyway, the point was the i7 numbers. See, these numbers are much higher on all this stuff here. And that's because it's got more cores and it's got hyper threading. And so they look like 8 cores, but not all of them. Some of them don't. I think some of the what do they call it? The mobile processors might have half as many cores or something. So again, you just have to look up these numbers and try to figure out what this stuff means. So anyway, let's go back here to our list. I think you can say by benchmark AMD, high end, low end. I thought you could search by, say, you put in the name of it. I guess here we could do this. New desktop, new laptop. Is that? Oh, they're talking about they're categories that say you have laptop processors or desktop processors, which again, that's another whole can of worms. If you're running on a laptop, which is considered a mobile processor, as opposed to a desktop, it's considered a desktop processor. But I was thinking there's somewhere you could just type in the name of your laptop and it would tell you, basically it would know what processor it has. And so I was thinking if you go to the mega list, where did that go? Single thread. System with multiple CPUs, blah, blah, blah. So it could still be that, if you look under the right stuff, you can find it. But your search model, what's model do? Single CPU systems. No, these are still just processors, I think, at this point. So I was saying, well, what if you put in HP? Come on. I think this is still just processors, but so anyway, these sites exist and you go look this stuff up. And if anybody finds one that says, here's comparing Raspberry Pis directly to laptops, I'd like to hear about that, because otherwise I'll spend, weeks searching for it and wasting my time. But if somebody knows, that'd be handy to know what that is. So that's something I ran across, and I was doing that just before Bob said he was going to buy a Raspberry Pi 5. So I was already digging into this stuff. That's what I had found out. So, and it comes back to the question, how big a computer do you need to run this? And the answer is, I don't know.
Just big enough.
Yeah, just big enough. So I guess really you just have to figure out what's the minimum you want the thing to do, and then say, how big a computer do I need to do that? So, because my argument on that is, several years ago, somebody says, well, I want to build a robot. Where do I start? And somebody says, well, build a line follower robot. So you get just a couple of motors and some wheels and some optical sensors, and you put a microcontroller on there or something, and you draw a line on the floor on a piece of paper. You put it on, it follows that. And now it's got to the point where now your entry level computer is a ROS based computer with, whatever it takes to, make the thing drive around. So you can just say, that your baseline could say, I want to run the navigation software. So in my house, I can say drive from this room to that room. And that would be your basic benchmark to do that, and say, how big a computer do I need to do that? At which point you can add on to that, or add a second. Say if you're running Raspberry Pis, if you had to, you can run a second Raspberry Pi just to do your whatever your fancy stuff that you're trying to do. So, and I've never seen anybody directly address that, so that's why I keep digging and looking and wasting a lot of time on this stuff. So that's all I have to say about that, I think.
I'm good too.
Okay.